Imagine for a moment that everything you've ever chased, success, peace, love, fulfillment, has always felt just one step beyond your reach, as if life is some eternal game of pursuit where you run endlessly toward the promise of arrival, yet somehow the destination keeps moving. What if I told you that the very idea of chasing is what keeps you from finding? That the more you reach, the more you lose touch with what's already in your hands? There is one idea, simple yet utterly transformative, an idea so subtle that it doesn't shout or demand your attention. It whispers, and unless you are still enough, you may never hear it. But once you do, it changes everything. The idea is this: you are not on the way to something, you are already there. You are not becoming, you are being. The life you seek, the peace you long for, the freedom you crave, they are not goals to be earned. They are realities to be realized. But we've been trained differently, conditioned to believe we are always unfinished. That something out there, some title, some wealth, some person, will complete us. We live in a culture that sells dissatisfaction as motivation. So we remain suspended in a trance of not yet. We postpone our joy, we delay our contentment, we defer our truth. And in doing so, we turn life into a problem to be solved rather than a mystery to be lived. The clouds don't strive to form perfect shapes. The waves don't apologize for crashing imperfectly. The trees don't grow according to blueprints. And yet they fulfill their purpose beautifully, effortlessly. What if your life, too, was never meant to be a construction project, but a blossoming? What if your real power was not in how much you could control or achieve, but in how deeply you could surrender to the flow of existence? There is something freeing in understanding that you don't need to earn your right to be here. You are here, breathing, conscious, alive. This moment is not a stepping stone. It is the stage. The spotlight is on, and the music is already playing. Most people wait for signs, wait for permission, wait for life to begin. But life isn't waiting, it's unfolding. Every second is a note in the symphony, and the question is not, when will the right moment arrive, but rather, are you hearing the music at all? This one idea, that you are not separate from life, but a part of its very heartbeat, can unshackle you from the endless loop of self-improvement and self-judgment. You don't need to perfect yourself to be worthy. You don't need to reach some imaginary summit to finally rest. Your value isn't in becoming more, but in being wholly and deeply what you already are. Now, the ego won't like this. The ego thrives on comparison, on goals, on the illusion of control. It wants a scoreboard. It wants applause. It feeds on tomorrow, yet it never did. And it's nocesia. Never, ever have I lost it. It gives bill pain. It's filthy. It foolish all of us. It judges. It chose. The irony is, when you stop trying to change your life, life begins to change. Not because you forced it, but because you aligned with it. Like a boat that stops fighting the current and starts flowing with the river. Suddenly, movement becomes effortless. Purpose becomes natural, and the struggle dissolves into grace. So don't look outside for the revolution. The great shift you long for doesn't lie in a job, a partner, or a place. It lies in this one realization that you are not missing anything. You never were. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are not late. You are, in the truest sense, already whole. And when that truth finally settles, not just in your mind, but in your being, it doesn't matter what changes on the surface, because something far deeper has changed within. You've been told your entire life that you're on your way to something, that each step you take is supposed to bring you closer to a goal, closer to a version of yourself that is better, more accomplished, more complete. So you keep walking. You wake up each morning with the unspoken belief that today is only valuable if it takes you somewhere else, somewhere beyond where you are right now. That voice inside you, conditioned by years of striving, says, "This isn't it yet. You're not there yet. Keep moving." But what if that voice is the very thing keeping you from arriving? Raised in a world obsessed with becoming. The idea is that life is always a rehearsal for some grand performance we've yet to reach. The job you're working, just a stepping stone. The relationship you're in, not quite perfect, but maybe it'll get better. Your own self-worth, always measured against a future version of yourself who somehow has it all figured out. And so the present becomes invisible. You move through your days as though they are checkpoints in a video game, necessary but unimportant. Just another Tuesday, just another hour, just another moment standing between you and that elusive someday. But the truth is, there is no someday. There never was. There is only now. This is the moment you were looking for. Not the one tomorrow or the one 5 years from now. This one. This breath. This thought. This simple, ordinary second in time that you have already dismissed as insignificant. That's where life is happening. That's where it always was. You are not on the way to your life. You are already living it. Look around, not with your eyes, but with your awareness. Notice how quickly your mind tries to reduce this moment into a means to an end. If you're working, it's about the paycheck. If you're resting, it's about preparing for the next thing. Even your joys are often measured by how long they last or how they compare to others. We've learned to view time as a ladder, each moment just a rung leading to some higher state. But life isn't a ladder. It's a dance. When you're dancing, you don't think about the final step. You don't rush through the movement just to reach the last note. You're fully there, in rhythm with the music. Likewise, the beauty of life is in living it right now. The very fact for what you eat. Living it, done with it. It may seem like a small shift, this idea that you're not going somewhere but you've already arrived. But that one shift rewires your entire existence. It releases the tension in your shoulders. It silences the voice in your head that constantly demands more. It allows you to sit, to breathe, to simply be, without guilt, without restlessness, without feeling like you're wasting time. Because how can you waste time when you understand that this is the time you've been given, not as a resource to be spent, but as a miracle to be witnessed? And when you begin to live with that awareness, everything changes. Your relationships are no longer transactional. They become sacred connections, held in the light of presence. Your work becomes an expression of being, not just a path to profit. Even the mundane, the way sunlight spills through your window, the sound of footsteps on pavement, the smell of coffee, suddenly feels like poetry. You realize that life isn't waiting for you to catch up. It's been gently inviting you all along to participate. But there's fear in that realization too, isn't there? Because if you accept that this moment is your life, then you must also accept responsibility for how you meet it. You can no longer blame the future for your unhappiness. You can no longer postpone your peace. You must stop running and look directly at what's in front of you. With all its imperfections, all its rawness, all its beauty, that can be terrifying, but it can also be the most liberating thing you'll ever do. Because the truth is, there is nothing more exhausting than constantly striving, the endless pursuit of becoming someone or somewhere else. It wears the soul down. It drains the joy from the present, feeding a hunger that can never be satisfied. And yet, that's how most people live. They keep their eyes fixed on the horizon, believing that fulfillment is just beyond the bend. But every time they arrive, the horizon moves again, and so they miss their own lives. Don't let that be you. Don't let the idea of someday rob you of the miracle of now. Because once you begin to see clearly, you'll notice something remarkable. The peace you've been chasing is not a reward waiting at the end of your journey. It's a quality of presence that's available at any moment if you dare to stop running. If you dare to be here, in the breath you're taking, in the sounds around you, in the stillness behind your thoughts, here, in the sacred ordinariness of being alive. There is nothing missing, nothing broken, nothing that needs to be added. And when you can truly see that, when you feel it not just as a concept, but as an inner reality, you'll understand something profound. The destination you've been seeking is the path itself. The treasure is not buried beneath the journey is the treasure. You are not becoming, you are not waiting, you are not behind, you are not lost. You are here, and here is everything. There's a quiet tragedy in the way most people live. From the moment we open our eyes in the morning, we are pulled into a current of not enough. Not enough time, not enough success, not enough love, not enough of anything. And beneath it all, a more painful whisper, I am not enough. So we begin to chase goals, dreams, approval, appearance, money, titles, even spirituality itself. Believing that if we can just perfect something about ourselves or our circumstances, then we'll finally arrive at peace. Then we'll be allowed to feel good. Then we'll be worthy of rest, love, and contentment. But perfection is a ghost. It looks solid from a distance, but try to touch it and your hand passes through nothing. Try to reach it and it moves further away. Every goal achieved only opens the door to another one. Every flaw corrected gives rise to a new insecurity. Every moment we try to polish and plan becomes another attempt to delay life until we've finally earned the right to enjoy it. And so we stay trapped, not in the world, but in our own minds. But there is a fundamental misunderstanding that keeps this cycle alive. the belief that peace is the outcome of perfection. But peace was never the reward for getting everything right. Peace is what comes when we finally stop trying so hard to fix what was never broken in the first place. This is why presence is so powerful. Presence requires nothing. It asks nothing of you. It doesn't demand improvement. It doesn't care whether your life looks impressive on paper. It simply invites you to stop, to look around, to breathe. And in that stillness, something magical happens. You begin to remember who you were before the world told you what you needed to be. Presence is not passive. It's not about sitting under a tree and forgetting the world. It's about waking up to the world as it is. It's about tasting your coffee without rushing to the next thought. It's about hearing the sound of your child's laughter without checking your phone. It's about letting the wind touch your face and actually feeling it instead of mentally skipping ahead to your to-do list. It's not an escape from life. It's the only way to enter it. When you stop chasing perfection and begin embracing presence, you reclaim your life from the illusion of someday. You step off the treadmill. You realize that the value of a moment is not determined by how productive or successful it is, but by how deeply you live it. A single ordinary moment lived fully is more meaningful than a lifetime spent sprinting towards some illusion of completion. The world around you will resist this idea. It has built entire economies on your insecurity. Industries thrive on convincing you that you are just one product, one course, one achievement away from finally being okay. You've been taught to hustle for your worth, to brand yourself, to sell an image, to stay busy so you don't have to feel the ache beneath the surface. But presence forces you to stop running, to sit with that ache. And in doing so, you find out that the ache is not some flaw in you. It's the soul's cry for attention, a cry for rest, a cry to come home. Coming home to the present moment is not about abandoning ambition or goals. It's about shifting your foundation. Instead of chasing a future to feel whole, you begin from a place of wholeness and let life unfold naturally. You can still build, you can still grow, but the desperation is gone, the anxiety softens. You begin to realize that you don't have to prove anything to exist. You don't need to be extraordinary to matter. Somewhere along the way, we began to confuse movement with meaning. We started thinking that if we're not constantly striving, we're failing. But life isn't a straight line from lack to perfection. It's a vast ocean of moments, each one complete in itself. And the only way to truly experience it is to be in it, not to watch it go by while dreaming of a better version. Think of a child playing in a field. They aren't trying to look good. They aren't trying to win. They aren't thinking about whether this game of tag will improve their future. They're just there, fully alive. Every breath, every laugh, every step, soaked in wonder. They're not burdened by the idea of perfection. They haven't yet learned to judge the moment. They haven't yet been taught to wait for happiness. It's only later, as we grow, that we learn to doubt the present and trade it for the illusion of a better tomorrow. But what if you could return to that state? What if you could let go of the constant measuring, comparing, fixing, and simply live each moment as it comes, flawed, beautiful, raw, and real? What if you could see that nothing needs to be added for this moment to be enough? This is not a call to laziness. It's a call to honesty, to stop performing for a world that is too busy performing to notice. To remember that the greatest gift you can offer yourself and others is your full attention, not your polished mask, not your well-edited highlight reel, just you, fully present, fully human. You may fear that if you stop chasing perfection, you'll become stagnant, that you'll settle. But the opposite is true. Presence is fertile ground. When you are present, you act from clarity, not fear. You move with intention, not panic. You create from inspiration, not anxiety. And ironically, you become more effective, more alive, more in tune with the flow of life. There is nothing more powerful than a person who is at peace with where they are, because they are no longer seeking approval, they are no longer bound by performance, and they no longer fear stillness. They don't need to impress, they don't need to achieve to feel worthy. Their energy is not wasted on trying to arrive. They are the arrival. You can spend your whole life trying to polish the mirror, hoping that one day you'll like your reflection. Or you can stop, look into it, and see that you were never meant to be perfect. You were meant to be present. And in that presence, everything you've been chasing finally finds its way back to you. There's something within us that has been taught to believe control equals safety. That if we can just map it all out, if we can plan perfectly, calculate every risk, predict every outcome, we will finally feel secure, we will finally find peace. So we tighten our grip on life. We set goals, create timelines, manage expectations, and strive to bend the unpredictable. But in doing so, we often find ourselves exhausted, anxious, and lost. Not because life is cruel, but because life doesn't respond to control, it responds to alignment. And that's a truth many never come to understand until they are broken down by the very control they once thought would save them. Life is not something you push. It's something you learn to flow with. The same way a river doesn't need help to reach the ocean, your life doesn't need to be forced into becoming something beautiful. It already knows the way. But your need to control, to constantly fix, measure, and direct, disrupts the natural rhythm of things. You stop listening. You stop observing. You stop trusting. And in that space, you become blind to the wisdom that's been guiding you all along. There's a softness that enters the heart when you finally understand that resisting life's current only creates suffering. We spend years trying to swim upstream toward the version of ourselves we think we're supposed to be, toward the future we think we have to create, toward the validation we believe we need. And all the while, life is gently whispering, let go. You don't have to fight so hard. But we rarely listen. We're afraid that surrender means failure, that letting go means giving up, that if we don't push, we'll fall behind. Yet those who surrender aren't lost. They are the ones who begin to see clearly. When you stop resisting the flow of life, when you stop trying to micromanage every detail, you don't disappear. You awaken. You begin to hear your own intuition again. You begin to notice the signs that were always there, the people who show up at the right moment, the doors that open without effort, the peace that comes without a reason. You stop clinging to outcomes and start appreciating experiences. You stop demanding answers and start listening to the silence. Letting go isn't about inaction, it's about inspired action. When you are aligned with life's current, your choices don't come from fear, they come from clarity. You are no longer reacting, you are responding. You are no longer frantic, you are intentional. You move not because you're panicking to catch up, but because you're being moved by something deeper, something wiser. And in that space, things begin to unfold with a kind of ease that control could never manufacture. But ease doesn't mean comfort. Life will still challenge you. There will still be loss, uncertainty, and heartbreak. But your relationship to those moments changes. You stop seeing them as interruptions and begin to recognize them as invitations. Invitations to grow, to surrender further, to deepen your trust in the unseen patterns of your life. The storm no longer feels like a punishment. It becomes part of the dance. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And begin wondering, what is this trying to show me? And there is freedom in that shift, real freedom, the kind that can't be bought or taught, the kind that comes only when you realize that the world doesn't need to be perfect for you to be at peace, that your circumstances don't have to make sense for you to breathe, that even in the chaos there is order, even in the heartbreak there is healing, even in the stillness there is progress. Most people live in constant resistance. They resist what they feel, they resist who they are, they resist where they are. And in that resistance, they build a wall between themselves and the present moment. They think they're protecting themselves, but in truth they are only delaying the beauty that life is offering them. The longer you resist, the longer you delay joy. Because joy doesn't live in your future, it lives in your surrender. Consider nature. A tree does not resist the wind, it bends. A river does not resist the rock, it flows around it. The sky does not resist the night, it embraces it. And in that rhythm, in that allowing, there is strength. The tree doesn't break, the river doesn't stop, the sky doesn't disappear. They continue effortlessly because they don't fight life. They dance with it. And that dance is available to you too. If you can loosen your grip, if you can stop needing everything to make sense, if you can trust that not knowing what's next doesn't mean you are failing. Sometimes the not knowing is the gateway to everything you need to learn. Sometimes the lack of control is exactly what brings you into alignment with what truly matters. But trust takes practice. It takes unlearning the habit of fear. It takes moments of silence where you sit with yourself and feel the urge to grasp, to fix, to predict, and you let it pass. You breathe instead. You listen instead. You ask life to show you instead of telling it what to do. And slowly, something inside begins to soften. The fear loosens, the anxiety quiets, the need to force is replaced by the willingness to receive. And when that shift happens, the world begins to respond differently. Not because the world changed, but because you did. You see beauty where there used to be pressure. You find meaning in the pause. You become grateful for things you once overlooked. And most of all, you begin to trust that even if you don't have all the answers, you are still on the right path. There's an old wisdom in surrender. Not the kind that weakens you, but the kind that brings you back to life. A surrender that says, I am willing to follow where this path leads, even if I do not know the destination. A surrender that allows you to rest, not because the work is done, so when the current pulls you in a direction you didn't expect, stop resisting. When the door closes, stop pounding on it. When the plan unravels, stop trying to tape it back together. Be still, listen, breathe, and let the river show you where it's going. It may not take you where you thought you needed to go, but it will take you where you were always meant to be. There's a profound misunderstanding that most people carry without even realizing it, the idea that we are somehow separate from life, that we are individual entities standing apart from the world looking in, that life is something happening around us or to us, not something we are inherently part of. We draw mental lines between me and everything else, believing we are the observer, the controller, the one making it all happen. And so we feel isolated, disconnected, and often afraid. But what if that separation is nothing more than an illusion? What if the self you think you are is not separate from life at all, but a direct expression of it? You weren't dropped into existence like a stranger entering a room. You arose from it. Just as waves arise from the ocean and then return to it, you are not something other than life. You are life in human form. Your thoughts, your breath, your experiences, they are not detached from the world around you, they are flowing with it. And the moment you begin to see that, truly see it, the illusion of separation starts to fade. You are no longer an outsider. You are no longer alone. You are no longer lost in a universe that feels indifferent. You realize that everything you are and everything you've been searching for is already part of the same great unfolding. You are not observing life from a distance. You are in the very heart of it. And life isn't just happening to you, it's happening through you. The trees don't grow apart from the soil, they emerge from it. The stars don't exist in isolation. They are held by gravity, woven into galaxies. Everything in nature is interconnected. Nothing exists on its own. So why would you be any different? But modern life teaches you otherwise. You're taught to build walls around your identity, your beliefs, your ambitions. You're taught to protect yourself, define yourself, elevate yourself above others, as if being separate makes you more valuable. But in that separateness, you lose something essential. You lose your connection to the very source of peace, creativity, and truth. You become like a wave that has forgotten its part of the sea, frightened, fragile, and desperate to hold its form. When you believe you're separate, everything becomes a threat. Other people become competition. The future becomes something to fear. The present becomes something to control. You're constantly on edge, trying to secure your place in a world you feel you don't truly belong to. And that anxiety, that ache in your chest that never fully goes away, it's not a flaw. It's the soul's cry to return to what it has forgotten. That you are not separate, you are one with life itself. And this isn't just a poetic idea, it's something you can feel if you're willing to slow down and notice. When you sit by the ocean and feel the rhythm of the waves echo in your breath, when you walk through a forest and sense the silence speaking louder than words. When you hold someone's hand and realize that, in that moment, there is no boundary between giving and receiving, just connection. These are glimpses, small windows, into a deeper reality that has always been there, waiting for you to remember. You don't need to force this realization. You don't need to meditate for hours or climb a mountain or read ancient texts. You simply need to notice. Notice how life is constantly supporting you. Even when you forget to pay attention, the breath comes without asking. The heartbeat continues without permission. The sun rises, the seasons shift, and your body knows what to do when you're wounded. This intelligence, this grace, it's not happening somewhere out there. It's you. It's within you. It is you. And once you begin to live with that awareness, your entire experience changes. You stop feeling like you're behind. You stop trying to chase your place in the world. You already belong. You always have. That belonging is not something to be earned. It is something to be recognized. The same force that births stars and moves oceans is expressing itself through your thoughts, your emotions, your desires. You are not a mistake. You are not an accident. You are not random. You are a necessary part of this whole. And your existence is the universe knowing itself in a unique way. This changes how you see other people too. When you stop identifying yourself as separate, others are no longer just strangers. You begin to recognize them as reflections of the same life force. Their joys, their sorrows, their mistakes, they mirror your own. Compassion grows not from trying to be a good person, but from realizing that hurting another is, in a very real sense, hurting yourself. Love ceases to be a transaction and becomes a remembering that we are not two but one. Even your struggles take on new meaning. When you're no longer trying to fix or fight the world, but instead flow with it, challenges don't feel like punishment. They feel like movement, like growth. You begin to ask not, how do I get rid of this pain, but what is this pain trying to reveal? Because everything becomes a teacher. Every moment becomes sacred, even the difficult ones. It's not always easy to stay in this awareness. The world will constantly try to pull you back into the illusion of separation. Ego wants to survive. It wants to control. It wants to label and divide and claim ownership. But you don't have to fight it. You just have to remember, again and again, return to that still place within you that knows, I am not separate from life. I am an expression of it.
When a man starts to wake up, he naturally pulls away from the crowd. Not because he hates people, but because the usual way of connecting stops making sense. Most conversations revolve around status, gossip, or complaints. And once he begins to see through that, it gets harder to engage. He's not bitter. He's not isolating himself out of pride. He's just stopped chasing what others are still chasing. He starts to notice the performance in everyday interaction, the need to be liked, to belong, to say the right thing. And without making a big deal about it, he quietly steps back. People might still wave. They might still offer small talk. But the connection is no longer there, because it was never real to begin with. He didn't cut ties, he didn't burn bridges. He simply stopped pretending. And when he does that, distance happens on its own. This is the beginning of solitude, not loneliness, just space between who he used to be and who he's becoming. He starts to see clearly what holds people together isn't real. It's not depth, it's not truth. It's habit, comfort, and shared illusions. People bond over complaining about their jobs, over chasing status, over defending ideas they've never truly questioned. He used to do the same. He used to think that was connection. But now it feels more like noise. He notices how often people speak, just to avoid silence. How much energy goes into keeping up appearances. The constant need for validation, for agreement, for reassurance. And once he no longer needs those things himself, he sees how dependent others are on them. How relationships often survive not because of honesty, but because everyone agrees to keep the story going. He understands why people hold on to what feels familiar. He still cares. He still listens, but he no longer plays along. That shift, subtle as it is, creates distance all on its own. From the outside, he might seem the same. He still shows up. He's still polite. He hasn't disappeared completely. But something fundamental has shifted, and the people around him can feel it, even if they can't name it. They sense that he's no longer trying to impress anyone, that he's not looking for approval, that he's not playing the social game anymore. Some find it admirable, others find it unsettling, because he's no longer easy to read, because he's not performing for anyone. He doesn't flatter, doesn't compete, doesn't entertain, and that makes him hard to place. People might say he's distant, or too quiet, or that he's changed. What they really mean is, he no longer fits into the roles they've grown used to. They liked him better when he reflected their values. Now, he reflects something else, something still, grounded, and not dependent on being liked. People see him, but they don't really know him, because knowing him now would require them to see what he sees, and most people aren't ready for that. He once believed that staying connected meant staying involved, showing up, participating in conversations, maintaining appearances. But with time, that definition changed. As his priorities shifted inward, he stopped engaging out of obligation, not because he cared less, but because he no longer needed others to affirm his place in the world. He still values connection, but not if it depends on constant engagement, emotional performance, or subtle negotiation for approval. He doesn't withdraw out of resentment. He simply no longer finds value in maintaining relationships built on pretense or expectation. To those accustomed to transactional connection, his presence can feel distant. But in truth, he's simply not playing the same role anymore. He no longer speaks just to keep the peace. He no longer sees himself through other people's eyes. What emerges in that space is not loneliness, but clarity. A calm independence that allows him to remain rooted even when others come and go. He's become honest, and from that honesty, a deeper kind of freedom begins to take shape. From the outside, solitude is often misunderstood. To most people, being alone signals a lack of friends, of purpose, of belonging. But for a man who has begun to see clearly, solitude becomes something else entirely. He no longer fills his time with distractions, just to avoid being alone with himself. He no longer seeks out constant company, to escape discomfort. He's learned to sit in silence without needing it to end. What others describe as loneliness is often just unfamiliar stillness. They equate the absence of noise with emptiness. He's realized that most of what fills a typical day, talks, tasks, and duties, is just noise pretending to be important. In solitude, he sees himself without distortion. There's no one to impress, no image to maintain, and that clarity, while uncomfortable at first, becomes a source of strength. He doesn't avoid people, but he also no longer depends on them to feel complete. This shift usually confuses others. They assume he must be withdrawn, disconnected, or even arrogant. But in truth, he's simply content with his own presence. He has faced the silence most people run from and discovered it wasn't silence at all. It was peace. As he grows more inwardly stable, he becomes less predictable to others. Not by intent, but by the simple fact that he no longer participates in the subtle exchanges that define most social interaction. He does not mirror emotions to gain approval. He does not offer reassurance when it would mean denying what he sees. To those still dependent on external validation, this creates discomfort. They may interpret his neutrality as arrogance, his silence as judgment, his detachment as disinterest. In reality, he is none of those things. He's simply no longer invested in managing perception. Much of what people call connection is actually a performance, a mutual agreement to keep certain illusions intact. Once he steps outside that arrangement, he disrupts it just by being present. He doesn't argue or provoke or attempt to convert anyone to his view. But the absence of familiar signals, approval, flattery, emotional reinforcement, makes others uneasy. Many of his previous friendships begin to fade, not because of conflict, but because the foundation they stood on no longer holds. He begins to notice how often relationships are maintained through shared complaints, routine habits, or the mutual reinforcement of personal narratives. Once he no longer participates in those patterns, the connection weakens on its own. He no longer feels compelled to offer agreement for the sake of belonging. He no longer entertains conversations that avoid substance, and he has no interest in maintaining ties that require him to shrink himself. This shift is not a rejection of others. It's the result of a change in what he's willing to invest his energy in. True friendship becomes something quieter, simpler, and far more rare. It is no longer based on shared illusions, but on mutual recognition. Two people who don't need each other, yet choose to walk alongside one another without expectation. These kinds of connections cannot be manufactured. They emerge naturally, if at all, and only when both individuals have stopped seeking to be completed by the other. Most social interaction relies on unspoken rules. You validate my perspective, I'll validate yours. We won't go too deep. We won't challenge each other's assumptions. We'll pretend we agree, even if we don't. He used to play by those rules because everyone did. But once he starts operating outside of them, the dynamic begins to break down. He no longer gives comfort just to ease tension. He doesn't pretend to agree when he doesn't. He's done with the little acts that keep everyone else feeling safe, but keep him feeling false. This isn't defiance, it's clarity. And that clarity is disruptive because it exposes how much of everyday life is based on mutual avoidance of truth. People notice, even if they don't understand what's changed. They feel the shift. They sense that something familiar has gone missing. The constant exchange of comfort, validation, and distraction. And without him feeding the system weakens. Talks start to feel awkward. People stop reaching out as much. What used to feel warm and familiar now feels tense and uneasy. Not because he did something wrong, but because he stopped playing along. He hasn't rejected anyone. He simply stopped reinforcing a structure he no longer believes in. As his understanding deepens, something unexpected happens. He begins to need less, not just materially, but emotionally, socially, even intellectually. He no longer seeks recognition. He no longer relies on others to confirm what he already knows internally. And as that need dissolves, so do many of the relationships that once required it. This is the paradox. The clearer he becomes, the quieter his life becomes. Not because he's closed off, but because so much of what once filled his time was rooted in a search for external affirmation. Without that search, most social activity feels optional, if not unnecessary. He stops trying to be understood. He stops needing to explain. He no longer measures his presence by how much space he takes up in other people's lives. From the outside, this might look like withdrawal, but inside it's the opposite, a settling into something solid and real. He still values connection, but only when it emerges naturally, without demand or performance. He hasn't become cold. He's simply no longer dependent. And in that detachment, there's a kind of depth that can't be found through attachment. Once he wakes up, he can't unsee what he sees. He looks inward, and the noise quiets. He looks outward, and the world is still asleep. He sees the false certainty in people's eyes, the roles they perform, the beliefs they never question, the constant movement that masks an inner stillness they haven't touched. He no longer envies what others call connection, because he understands the cost it often demands: agreement, performance, conformity, and he won't trade truth for the comfort of fitting in. Still, there's a part of him that remembers, a part that quietly hopes, not for crowds, not for company, but for someone awake, someone who has seen what he's seen, felt what he's felt, someone who doesn't need him to be smaller, quieter, or more agreeable in order to feel safe. That kind of meeting is rare. It can't be forced, and he would rather wait in silence than pretend in conversation. So he walks alone, not because he enjoys being apart, but because in a world still dreaming, authenticity is more valuable than acceptance. At some point, the solitude stops feeling unusual. It becomes normal, not empty, just quiet. He no longer interprets distance as a problem to solve. He sees it for what it is, the natural result of no longer pretending. While others surround themselves with noise, he has learned to live in stillness. While many chase attention, he moves without asking to be seen. People often assume he must feel lonely, as if company, any company, is always better than walking alone. But they confuse isolation with absence. He is not absent. He is simply no longer performing. He has come to prefer the space that honesty creates over the closeness that illusion demands. This is the final shift. He doesn't need the world to wake up for him to feel whole. He doesn't need agreement to feel clear. And he doesn't need validation to know who he is. He walks alone, yes, but not as an outsider, as a man at peace with the cost of truth.
You've been lied to your entire life, not by your parents, not by your friends, but by the very institution that claims to prepare you for reality. School. There's one fundamental truth about existence that every human being desperately needs to know, but it will never appear on any curriculum, never be found in any textbook, and never be taught in any classroom. And the reason they don't teach it? Because if everyone understood this one simple truth, the entire system would collapse overnight. What I'm about to tell you in the next few minutes will make you question everything you thought you knew about success, happiness, and what it means to be alive. This isn't just philosophy. This is the secret that could save you from wasting your entire life chasing things that will never make you happy. Here's what schools teach you from the moment you walk in. You are a separate individual who needs to compete with other separate individuals to acquire things that will make you happy. You need to get good grades to get into a good college, to get a good job, to make good money, to buy good things, and then finally you'll be happy. This is the greatest lie ever told. But it's not just a lie, it's a necessary lie. Because this lie built our cities, our technology, our entire civilization. The belief that you're separate and need to acquire things to be complete is what drives people to work 40 hours a week for 40 years. It's what makes them buy products they don't need with money they don't have to impress people they don't like. The system depends on you never discovering what I'm about to tell you. Here's the one thing schools will never teach. You are not who you think you are. Right now, you think you are John, or Sarah, or Maria, some separate person with a history, a personality, problems to solve, goals to achieve. But this is just a story you've been taught to tell about yourself. It's not what you actually are. What you actually are is far more extraordinary than any story. Look around you right now. You see objects, colors, shapes. You hear sounds. You feel sensations in your body. You have thoughts floating through your mind. Now here's the question that will blow your mind. Who is aware of all these things? You might say, I am, but what is this I? When you look for it, what do you actually find? Here's what you'll discover if you look carefully. There's no separate self in there at all. There's just awareness, just consciousness, just this open space in which all experiences appear and disappear. The person you think you are, with all their memories, their personality, their problems, is just another experience appearing in this awareness. Like a character in a dream, you are not the character. You are the dreamer. You are not the wave. You are the ocean. You are not the actor. You are the stage on which all of life's drama plays out. Now you might wonder, if this is true, why doesn't anyone teach this in school? Because schools aren't designed to show you what you really are. Schools are designed to create productive workers, obedient consumers, and compliant citizens. They need you to believe you're a separate individual who needs to compete, acquire, and achieve. If everyone understood that they are already complete, already whole, already connected to everything else, who would show up to work on Monday morning? Who would buy products they don't need? Who would compete in the rat race? The entire economic system depends on your ignorance of what you really are. But here's the real crime of education. It doesn't just fail to teach you what you are, it actively teaches you what you're not. From kindergarten through college, you're taught to identify with your thoughts, your achievements, your failures, your social status. You're given a name, a student ID number, a GPA, a class rank. You're constantly compared to others, constantly measured, constantly told that who you are depends on what you do. You're taught that you are your thoughts. I think, therefore I am. That you are your emotions. I am angry. I am sad. That you are your achievements. I am successful, or I am a failure. But none of this is true. Thoughts come and go. Are you just a temporary thought? Emotions rise and fall. Are you just a passing feeling? Achievements are gained and lost. Are you just your latest accomplishment? What you really are never changes, never comes or goes, is never born and never dies. Here's what's really insidious. This false education creates a particular kind of suffering that keeps you trapped in the system forever. When you believe you're a separate self that needs to acquire things to be happy, you live in a constant state of lack. There's always something missing, something to achieve, something to fix about yourself. So you spend your life chasing degrees, careers, relationships, money, status, experiences, always thinking the next acquisition will finally make you complete. But it never does, because you were never incomplete to begin with. This is what I call the hamster wheel of becoming. You're constantly running toward a future state of happiness that never arrives, because the runner and the destination are both illusions. But here's what happens when you really get this. When you see through the illusion of separation, the constant anxiety disappears, because there's no separate self to protect. The endless wanting stops, because there's nothing you need to be complete. The fear of death dissolves, because what you really are was never born and can never die. The need to prove yourself vanishes, because there's no separate self that needs proving. Competition becomes cooperation, because there's no one else. It's all one consciousness appearing as many. So what are you, really? You are the awareness in which all experience happens. You are the consciousness that makes all knowledge possible. You are the space in which all thoughts, emotions, sensations, and perceptions appear. You are not in the universe is in you. You are not separate from life. You are life itself, experiencing itself subjectively. Every person you meet, every animal you see, every plant, every star, they're all different expressions of the same consciousness that you are. It's like one actor playing every role in a cosmic play. This isn't philosophy or religion. This is direct, experiential reality that you can verify right now. Want proof? Try this experiment right now. Close your eyes and notice that you're aware. Don't think about awareness, just notice it directly. Now notice that this awareness has no boundaries, no edges, no center, no location. It's not inside your head or outside your head. It's the space in which the very ideas of inside and outside appear. Notice that this awareness is completely peaceful, completely still, completely present. It's not anxious about the future or depressed about the past. It simply is. Now notice something even more remarkable. This awareness is exactly the same awareness that's looking out of every other pair of eyes on the planet. It's the same consciousness experiencing itself as 7 billion different people. You are not one of those people. You are the consciousness itself. When you really understand this, not just intellectually, but experientially, everything changes. Work becomes play because there's no separate self that needs to prove anything. Relationships become celebration because you're not trying to get anything from another person. You're celebrating the same consciousness appearing as two bodies. Problems become games because there's no real problem haver, just consciousness playing at having problems. Death becomes irrelevant because what you are was never born and can never die. Success and failure become equally meaningless because there's no separate achiever to succeed or fail. This understanding is what's been called enlightenment, awakening, self-realization, cosmic consciousness. But these are just fancy words for recognizing something utterly simple. What you are, it's not something you achieve or attain. It's something you are and have always been. The only thing that changes is that you stop pretending to be something else. It's like an actor who's been so lost in playing a role that they forgot they were acting. Awakening is just remembering, oh, right, I'm the actor, not the character. But here's the beautiful part. Even after you remember you're the actor, You can still enjoy the play. You can still participate fully in life. You just don't mistake the drama for reality. This is why this understanding is the forbidden knowledge of our time. Not because it's secret or hidden, but because it's so simple and obvious that it's invisible. It's like asking a fish about water. They can't see it because they're completely immersed in it. You can't see consciousness because you are consciousness. Schools teach you everything except what you are, because what you are doesn't need to be taught, it needs to be recognized. You don't need to learn to be conscious. You need to notice that you already are conscious. You don't need to become enlightened. You need to realize you were never unenlightened. You don't need to find yourself. You need to stop pretending you're lost. But this isn't just abstract philosophy. This understanding has immediate, practical implications. Decision-making becomes effortless because there's no ego struggling to make the right choice. Decisions arise naturally from wisdom rather than fear. Creativity explodes because there's no self-judgment blocking the flow. Art becomes the universe expressing itself through your hands. Love becomes unconditional because there's no separate self that needs something from others. Love flows naturally when the barriers are removed. Peace becomes your default state because conflict only happens between separate selves, and there are no separate selves. You don't need to wait to experience this. You can have a taste of it right now. Stop trying to improve yourself for just one moment. Stop trying to get somewhere or become something for just one moment. Stop trying to solve your problems for just one moment. Just be exactly what you are, right now, without changing anything. In that moment of complete acceptance, what do you find? You find that what you are is already perfect, already complete, already at peace. The only reason you don't feel this constantly is because you're constantly trying to be something other than what you are. Here's the final secret schools will never teach you. The game is already won. You're not trying to become enlightened. You're enlightenment itself playing at being unenlightened. You're not trying to find happiness. You're happiness itself playing at being sad. You're not trying to find love. You're love itself playing at being separate. The cosmic joke is that what you're seeking is what's doing the seeking. What you're trying to find is what's looking. What you're trying to become is what you've always been. So here's your choice. You can continue playing the game of separation, competition, and acquisition that school taught you. There's nothing wrong with this. It's one valid way to experience being human. Or you can wake up from the dream of separation and realize what you really are. You can discover that you are not a wave trying to become the ocean. You are the ocean itself, playing at being a wave. You can realize that you are not a human being having a spiritual experience. You are a spiritual being having a human experience. You can understand that you are not in the universe. The universe is your body. You are not facing reality. You are reality, looking at itself in the mirror. This is your invitation to the greatest adventure possible, the discovery of what you really are. It doesn't require going anywhere, learning anything new, or becoming anyone different. It just requires stopping the search long enough to notice what was never lost. Schools taught you to be a good student. Life is now inviting you to be a good detective, to investigate the most important mystery of all, who you really are. And here's a hint. The detective and the mystery are the same. The seeker and the sought are one. The question and the answer are identical. You are what you're looking for. The one thing schools never taught you is the one thing you never needed to learn. You are already what you've always been looking for. The search is over. Welcome home.